UFOs are demonic and we should not be pursuing them. This is what a senior Department of Defense official, Louis Elizondo, reminds us of. Arjun Walia reports on Out of Mind. Louis Elizondo, former intelligence officer with the Department of Defense and former director of AATIP, the Pentagon's previous UFO program from 2010 to 2017, says, No, it is not Lou who believes UFOs are demonic. He instead tells a story of someone else within the government who had this belief. Elizondo, along with his colleague Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, and Steve Justice, a recently retired Director of Advanced Systems at Lockheed Skunk Works, when they all began speaking publicly about the UFO phenomenon in 2017. In doing so, they joined many others with verified high-ranking backgrounds from within government who publicly comment on the subject, voicing their concerns that the phenomenon is real and that the public has a right to know about all this. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. From the perspective of a citizen, why have UFOs been kept secret is a difficult question to answer. Yes, there is the possibility that there are corporate and financial elite interests tied to this phenomenon who would like to capitalize on it and or influence the perception of citizens regarding the phenomenon for ulterior motives, but perhaps that's not true. It's not something we hear about from all whistleblowers who have come forward. So what's going on? It's difficult to know, and only a small group of people seem to control the secrecy around this subject. A common theme seems to be that one large reason for the secrecy is perhaps the implications it has on culture and religion. Multiple whistleblowers over the years have told us that governments know that the phenomenon is controlled by non-human intelligence. And in the 15-minute mark of the interview with New York Post, Elizondo speaks about a meeting he had with a senior Department of Defense official who told him that there are people within government who do not want information about the subject to get out due to the officials, that is, philosophical and religious belief systems. I remember the conversation very well. This is a person I respected tremendously, very, very senior person. He told me, he said, we already know what it is. I said, okay, sir, so it's ours? He said, no, that's not what I'm saying. And he asked me point blank, have you read your Bible lately? The Holy Bible, that is. And I wasn't quite sure where he was going with that. And I said, where are you going with this? And he said, well, then you know that these are demonic and we should not be pursuing them. And he wasn't kidding. That's exactly how he felt. Lou then goes on to emphasize that no matter what it is, we need to figure it out. There was a time when the church would not even look through the telescope of Galileo because it conflicted with their narrative. This is something we have been dealing with for a long time. Imagine the first person that decided to get on the boat and sail over the horizon. Right. And there's discussion of sea monsters and krakens that will devour you and destroy your boat. And yet we did it anyways. We did sail and explore the world, and it turns out, 500 years later, there really are sea monsters, except for what we call the great squid of the Pacific, and we call them great white sharks and whales. Now they're just a part of nature. They have a scientific name. But those sea monsters still exist. They're there. We just learn to understand them, and maybe this is the same thing. Maybe this is just yet another expedition over the horizon in which we're going to realize what we thought were monsters are really just neighbors. So you can check the full interview if you're interested. This begs a question. Is humanity ready for the disclosure? Regardless of the answer, it's happening. Personally, I believe we are, and I do not like the idea of high-ranking officials who are guided by their belief systems dictating what these objects represent. I do not feel comfortable with a small group of people determining whether or not humanity is ready for such exploration. Why should they decide? Throughout history, we continually go through paradigm-shifting moments, and every time we deny them and shy away from them as a way of holding on to beliefs. But is this our human nature, or is it something we can overcome with awareness? The UFO subject and its disclosure of it at the mainstream level represents just that, a paradigm-shifting moment that calls into question what we thought we knew about nature of our reality. Are we open to it? And here's another great quote from Dr. Eric Davis that may provide something insight as well. Davis, a renowned astrophysicist who worked with the Pentagon UFO program, stated that he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March 2020 about retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this earth. I think there's a lot of evidence that the government has known, but the problem is it's so outside the realm of human comprehension that they can't deal with it on a legislative basis, they can't deal with it on a military operational basis, and they can't deal with it on the basis of a presidential policy. Being a researcher in the field for more than 15 years, stories of beings associated with these objects range from what we can perceive as very benevolent to malevolent. There are all kinds of stories out there, some which have very interesting corroborations among multiple supposed experiencers, quote unquote. Perhaps all of these objects are not from one place or the same species. Perhaps we have been visited by intelligent life from other galaxies, universes, and dimensions. Perhaps some are interplanetary. There's so much of our reality, quote unquote, that we cannot perceive with our senses. Perhaps they exist here on Earth, but in these other realms we cannot perceive with our senses. The topic is quite vast and leaves no aspect of humanity untouched. The latest program disclosed by the U.S. Defense Department is the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. The Department of the Navy, under the cognizance of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, is currently leading that program, UAPTF. In the New York Post interview, Elizondo explains many things and something that's not novel. One of them is that the Navy, as well as other military branches, have encountered these objects on a daily basis. Prior to the mainstream UFO disclosure we've seen in the past couple of years, this was already quite evident. There are tens of thousands of pages of declassified documents describing military encounters with UFOs. These documents contain radar tracking data, pictures, and now videos that have been released, as well as testimony from the pilots involved. And this is nothing new. Although it may be new in the public eye, it's been something that's been happening since man was able to take flight. The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. There are objects probably approximately in the shape of a disc of such appreciable size as to appear to be as large as a man-made craft. The reported operating characteristics such as extreme rates of climb, maneuverability, particularly in roll, and the actions which must be considered evasive when sighted or contacted by friendly aircraft and radar. They all lend belief to the possibility that some of these objects are controlled either manually, automatically, or remotely. This is from General Nathan Twining, 1947. The phenomenon has also been documented in the printing press in times of antiquity, prior to the time of our modern-day technology. It's even seen in historical pieces of artwork. It's safe to say that the phenomenon has been observed for a very long time, yet only now are we taking it seriously. That's because perhaps we have images of these craft. Now, it's quite clear that governments around the world have been studying this phenomenon while keeping humanity in the dark about what they've discovered. Intelligence agencies in the U.S. are set to disclose what they know about the phenomenon very soon. I think the date is June 1st, according to John Ratcliffe. But any information beyond what is already known among many ufologists is not to be expected. It's safe to assume that a wealth of information will still be kept classified for national security purposes. I put national security in quotations because, in my opinion, I feel in many cases national security has become an umbrella term to justify the concealment of information due to its implications on the human belief in culture or to protect corporate and perhaps elitist agendas. Perhaps I'm wrong. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweigh the dangers which are cited to justify it, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. This was from JFK Library and Archives. Humans are free, and it's on Out of Mind too. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.